Not. I think the problem we have, and I'm not telling you anything new, and Lynn mentioned presidential politics, the all or nothing, the sniping. You've got a ton of people who think solving the problem is driving by and telling you the house is on fire. It's the firefighters that are doing the work. And on ag policy, I think it's more important than ever where a lot of things, and I mention this often, people ask me if Washington is like that show House of Cards, if some of you have seen it. I said, no, it's like Forrest Gump. Sometimes people just don't know and things happen. And I think for us as agriculture legislators and all of you, we need to help educate people and bring them in. This is not an all or nothing. Everyone agrees we need to have clean air. Now let's decide how to best do it in a way that we can still produce the food, the fuel, the fiber that we need. And when we do that, we come up with working solutions like the recent GMO compromise that said you've got the right to know what's in your food, but let science drive the innovation to feed the world. And so, no, we have to engage them and continue to bring them in.
Jim Hagedorn, you're next.
Let me give you the honest answer.
We're getting a little feedback up here, excuse me. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
Let me give you the honest answer. And that is there's a brewing war against agriculture in this country, every bit as much as there was a war against coal. This administration and many people in the Democratic Party are looking to weaponize the EPA in order to have control over agriculture and coerce, drive up costs, and make it different. EPA stands for Eviscerate Production Agriculture. That's where we're going. Now, there are a lot of interest groups on that other side as well. Animal rights people, folks, environmental extremists. Some of them are in the White House. And they're out to destroy production agriculture and everything we have going in rural Minnesota, rural America, and our way of life. And I think it's time to send people to Washington that not only understand that, but are willing to fight against it and fight to the political death in order to defend your interests.
Steve Williams?
We would ignore it at our great peril. There are legitimate issues for these groups to be concerned about what's going on in agriculture. And they have a lot of support. And we better start listening to what they have to say, or what Jim describes is going to happen. The EPA is going to come in and dictate what we're going to do. We better take a good, hard look at ourselves and decide, are we being the stewards that we should be? And if not, we better figure out how to correct it, or we're going to get what we deserve.
Okay, we go to our next questioner, and we are back to Kevin Penn.
We've talked about adding value through renewable fuels and biofuels and such. We've talked about beginning farmers and that importance of generational sustainability. But quite frankly, in agriculture and farming, the original adding value was to walk it off the farm, animal agriculture. That's the easiest way to get that next generation started on the farm. They've got that labor. Where do you see animal agriculture, that adding value? Is there a place for that with federal regulations in the state of Minnesota?
Congressman Emmer?
Is it working? Kevin, is there a place for the federal government? The federal government thinks it belongs everywhere. My view is no. It's not, it shouldn't be everywhere, but we've got a great example. You're talking about animal farming. We got a great example with GMOs. Does the federal government have a place in making sure that everybody understands the rules and has a fair playing field? Yes. As far as going forward, though, I think we have to look at how we get the regulation off their back, how we create more opportunities for farms to be passed from one generation to the next without all kinds of tax complications involved, and make sure that we can support not only the large operation, but everybody in the economic food chain down to the smallest producer. And I think that's going to be the future, and the federal government's going to have a place in it, but I'd like to see the federal government and the state government do it in a way that doesn't duplicate, doesn't create excessive regulation and responsibility for the producer.
David Snyder, you're next.
When it comes to the meat producers, this is a very, how can I say, important question. Because we all know that national security is also food security. Now currently they don't want cool labels on meats coming into this country. And because of that, we can have cheap, unsafe, and low-quality imports replacing our meats that are produced by our own American farmers. The other thing we get into is the GMO labeling. And we've talked about this. Now, I don't know about all of you folks, but I can't read that. This might as well be printed in Latin, and I'd have a better understanding of understanding this than what our current GMO labeling is. And that's where we're getting to. Now, if we can get Collin Peterson back as chair of the Agriculture Committee by electing a bunch of Democrats so that we have a Democratic-controlled House, what you'll have is no longer this type of labeling. You'll have pool labeling, which is going to tell us where this meat's coming from and restrict imports coming into this country. And you'll also have the people knowing that their food's being produced here in America. Thank you.
And Bob Helen?
Compared with Representative Emmer, I try not to see government as an adversarial role to you as farmers. You are the people that would elect any of us that have elected them, and I think it's best that we try to overcome this adversarial role of government and get into a partnership. You need government, government needs you. It's very well related. So to get over that, I do agree with the GMO labeling. You know, again, with regulation, if there's information in the market, there's evidence for the need. Obviously, GMO labeling is something that's coming up. Origin source labeling is another key thing that will protect domestic farmers. And it's important, as David said, in the interest of national security, that we have food security and water security. But in sum, I'm running so we can get over this idea that it's the government doing things to you. I want to be a partner with farmers, and I think we could come to a better agreement working together rather than looking at opposite ends of a fight.
Okay, we're on to the next question, and we have Doug Peterson.
Thank you. For many right now, the current financial farm situation, especially for dairy, is very challenging. If you would please give us your ideas and thoughts on how the government can help farmers in difficult times, especially on dairy farmers. Thank you.
Congressman Peterson.
Thank you, Doug. Specifically on dairy, you know, we wrote this new safety net for dairy. And one of the problems was we kind of wrote it at the wrong time when we had the highest feed cost we've ever had. And we were concerned at the time that it was going to be actually too generous. We were going to end up with too much production. But what ended up happening, we had $12 feed costs at the time that the USDA calculates every month. It's now $8. And so when you add the margin on top of the feed cost, the program today does not look like something that people want to buy. So we haven't had the kind of sign-up that we need, and should have. So we're looking at tweaking that feed cost situation. There's a bunch of different things that are being considered, potentially looking at whether you raise your feed versus whether you buy your feed, and those kinds of things. So, you know, it's something that needs to be tweaked. We're on the right path, but the current program is just not working exactly like we designed it or we hoped it would, and we're hoping to fix it so it'll work better in the future.
David Hughes, you're next.
I've talked to a number of dairy producers in this state, and I haven't been able to confirm some of what they have told me independently, but I'll tell you what they've been telling me and what my thoughts are to answer your question. 3 points. One is we need a better temporary worker program. They tell me labor is one of their big issues. They can't get enough labor, and what they do get is too expensive. So it seems to me that in the broader national issue of immigration reform, a better temporary worker program would be key to the dairy issue. Number two is, and this is one of the things I need to confirm, but I'm told that the way milk producers are compensated is based on this, what seems to be an odd issue of proximity or lack thereof to a city in Wisconsin. So what they tell me is that the California dairy farmers are making out because of these rules. Again, I haven't been able to confirm that, but that's the impression of the milk farmers I've talked to. And finally, the issue of input costs. We need to drive down some of these input costs by not ramping up the renewable fuel standards and the other things that make input costs more expensive.
And Amanda Lynn Henson.
My dad used to haul milk from Barnesville down to Melrose, and when he did, every quarter mile was a stop. And after a couple of years, it turned into every half mile. And eventually, that turned into sporadic stops throughout the district. Our dairy farms are dwindling down to a very few large corporate farms. And I believe that one of the real big issues here we have is our trade with Russia. I lived in Russia, I was a missionary there. I saw the sanctions come against Russia and then Russia retaliate by banning our agricultural products. I saw as we didn't have the poultry and soybeans and we stopped seeing different products coming into the country. And cheese and dairy are one of the things that they stopped buying from not only us, but Europe as well. And Europe now has to find a buyer. We buy their cheese. We need to stop destroying our international relationships and help our trade work for Americans and for our farmers.
Okay, we're on to our next question from Teresa.
Okay, labeling food that contains genetically engineered ingredients has been in the news recently, and the passage of the law preempting the state laws. What are your thoughts on genetically engineered crops and on the necessity for such legislation?
Jim Hagedorn, you're first.
I support the steps that have been taken by the Agriculture Committee in the Congress recently in order to make sure that we don't have a problem. We can have Congress nationwide. I also don't see any evidence that there's a problem with such crops. I have people in my immediate family that might disagree with that. It's open to debate, but for me, that's where I see it at this time. Now, I think one thing that should be of concern to the folks on this panel is that you have nobody in the Republican Party to go to on the Agriculture Committee in order to work the next farm bill, in order to handle some of these issues. And I'm the most logical choice to win this election, and when I take power and sit on that committee on the first day, I will have more power in that day than my opponent has right now after 10 years in Congress. Because in the House, if you're in the majority party, you control the agenda. I think that's something that you should consider moving forward as you make your endorsements.
Okay, Steve Williams, you're next.
Okay, as a grower of fresh market sweet corn, I use GMO seed for at least half of my crop. And it allows me to reduce the amount of pesticides that I would otherwise have to spray on that crop in order to make it acceptable to the consumer. I think GMO should just be considered conventional agriculture, which goes along with the herbicides and the pesticides that we have to spray. If a person wants a product that is free of GMO genes, or that trait, all they have to do is buy an organic product. We already have the means for the person to make the decision. GMO should just be considered conventional agriculture. And like I say, if a person wants to buy something that's non-GMO, they could buy organic.
And Congressman Walz?
And they seemed like they were the old guys at the time, but I remember growing up on the farm and the old guys saying, Tim, someday when you're older, there may be 100 bushel corn. It's unbelievable what we're doing in science and all of that. I think we come from the state of Norman Borlaug. Innovation in agriculture is the trademark. This is the epicenter of that innovation in the world. We're able to feed far more people than we ever have with less land, less water, and less pesticides, as Steve has said. So we need to allow science to drive this, but we also don't need to make this an either or. People's right to know what's in their food should be respected. It goes back to the question, should we listen to the critics? Yes, let's bring them in, but we can't shy away from this idea that science is making these improvements, and the studies have been done and they show where they're safe. Again, I go back to what Steve said. If they want to label it, let's make sure they're non-GMO. They always label orange juice non-GMO. There are no GMO oranges. So you go into a Chipotle and they say non-GMO, non-antibiotic. We have to make our labels mean something. Chipotle should say non-salmonella. That's the one we're really concerned about when we go there, not the GMO issue. So label it, be true, keep it pure.
Okay, our next question is from Richard Hagan.
According to Pew Research, about 10,000 Americans cross the threshold each day from baby boomer into senior citizen ranks, and this will happen every day until 2030. So we have a huge growing number of us gray-headed people in the future. But will there be any money to even afford Social Security and Medicare for all of us advancing into that great tsunami is my question. And also, there's a few millennials up here on stage. Now, we are concerned about the political impact millennials will have in the election this fall. We know this much about millennials. You are political liberals for the most part. You're digital wizards. You're not particularly religious. You're slow to marry and have kids. And you're mostly broke. What does this mean in terms of the election this fall? Who will control the election? Senior citizens with authority or the new authority from millennials?
David Snyder?
Well, I hope it would be both. To answer your question about Social Security, all right, right now we have numerous amount of seniors living on the poverty level collecting Social Security, and that shouldn't be. We should be taking care of our seniors. Now, there have been several proposals on how to do this. Without cutting their benefits, without raising the retirement age, what we need to do is we need to remove the cap off of Social Security. Right now the cap is $118,500. We need to get rid of that so that every dollar earned is taxed. Now this is going to shore up our Social Security, and once we shore it up, what I would like to see is that there be a raise to our Social Security for our seniors so that none of our seniors ever have to live on a poverty level while collecting Social Security.
Bob Helen?
Thanks for the question, Dick. I think you really painted a very perfect picture of who I am in terms of that. I'm an unwed father of a month-old baby daughter. I work in financial analysis and information technology. I think the aptitudes and the proficiencies that my generation has, and it's not to discount what you've had to do, it's an enormous learning curve that a lot of people had to pick up, and you're obviously doing it. And what I see in all this great technology here at Farmfest and the ag innovations, so it's something that we are all in together, and I think opening the door for younger people like myself, getting into politics, getting into agriculture and farming, policy making, all those types of things will be a great boon that will carry our country forward. So I appreciate the question on Social Security. Absolutely, raise the tax max. I work for the Department of Revenue. All the different intricacies of that program created so much confusion in taxes. We just need to raise it, maybe cap the employer contributions, and shore it up for seniors.
Congressman Emmer?
I'm going to refrain from trying to judge the millennial generation. I just try to work with you. First off, you're not going to get there. You're not going to have the money, to your bigger question, with 1.1% GDP growth, or 1.7% since 2008. You got to reduce taxes. You have to streamline and eliminate excessive, unnecessary, and overly burdensome regulation, and you have to quit playing with the levers when it comes to our money supply. You can't keep injecting all this money. We've got to go back to the basics and grow our economy the way we did it in the past, which is allowing people to keep more of their money, innovate, create opportunities for themselves. And the people up here have to start to understand it's not us and them. We all want the same things. It's about what you offer, what's your vision, and how do you expect to get there. And I think we need more policymakers in Washington, D.C. who don't just talk about the farmers, but understand exactly what the farmer is dealing with when a guy from the MPCA shows up and asks him in a hog finishing barn, where do you exercise these animals? All right? That's the thing you got to get away from. You need to understand what government is doing to impede that growth, and you need to get government out of the way so you can do what you do best.
Okay, next question.
Thank you. In the Farm Bill, do we need an evaluation of price support levels to consider increasing price supports?
Okay, next up we have David Hewis.
Hello? All right, there we go. Certainly that issue needs to be examined. I'm not ready to say that's the direction I would take if I'm elected to Congress and I serve on the Agriculture Committee.
Amanda Lynn Hinson.
On the Farm Bill for 2018, I know that supports are necessary to continue to incentivize our farmers to research, to be innovative, and so I am for the supports, I'm not for subsidies. But I think that we need to remember that we do have a $19 trillion debt, so we need to be careful about how much we're spending. I believe that a free market is the #1 way to grow our economy, and deregulating, getting rid of burdensome regulations from the EPA, giving back the property rights of our farmers from the BLM and EPA. I think that we need to get rid of this state tax. Wouldn't that be nice, to be able to hand down your property without being taxed on it, and then keep that fund inside of the community and continue to grow the farm and continue to grow your community as well?
And Congressman Peterson.
Well, people go back in history. Frank Lucas and I, when we did the House bill for the current bill, we did not have a choice. We only had the counter-cyclical program, which is now called PLC. The Senate basically forced us into doing the ARC. Because of that, the levels that we put the safety net were lower than they would have been. So if I had my way, and I think Frank would agree with this, we're looking at $4 base price for corn, which is about the cost of production, and going to planted acres rather than this base, generic base that you can't explain to anybody. So, you know, I think the purpose of farm programs is to put a floor underneath these prices so people can survive. And if prices are above $4, keep the government out. We don't need to be involved. But have a basic floor under these prices. That's what we tried to do, but in the end of the day, in order to get a bill, we had to come up with this choice, which in my opinion was a mistake, was a mistake, and people will see that more as we go along.
Okay, we're going to go to the closing comments, and I'm going to throw something a little different at all of you to close. Tell us something about yourself that we don't know. What do you like to do? Tell us about your family, so we get to know you a little bit. What do you do in your free time? Do you have grandkids? Do you have kids? You know, tell us about the person rather than the politics. And I'm going to start out, we're just going to go right down the line, and we'll throw it to Congressman Walz first.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you to our panelists for the work you did. Kent and Lynn, I know how much work goes into this, and congratulations, Lynn, on Linder Farm Network's anniversary. To my fellow panelists up here, yeah, you can clap for the Linder Farm Network. Thank you to my fellow panelists for putting yourself out here in public service. It's what makes the democracy work. Thank you to all of you out here. I look around and there's folks that I've worked with for years, been coming here for a decade. We wrote farm bills together. There's folks out here that I actually taught and coached in football. There's folks out here that I served with during my 25 years in the military. And I even found this out. Steve, granddaughter, and my son Gus were in the same third grade classroom last year. So what it brings it to is all of this talk and all of this division, it's about us as a people. It's about us, what we want to do. And I'm incredibly proud. Someone here that makes me very happy. My mother, Darlene, is here today. She drove up from our farm, the same farm that's been in our family for over 130 years. And just like your families, all farm families, we know triumph and tragedy, but we know what at the heart and soul of this, it's about valuing the land, it's about valuing hard work, it's about wanting an honest shake, and it's about understanding that when your neighbor's down, a hand up once in a while is not the same as a hand out. And we can do those things and we can build a community that's that way. I believe that's the way our politics can be, because it's not an us versus them, as you heard people say. I'm the school teacher and the football coach and the National Guardsman that you elected to work together on these. And many of you, no matter what you hear, you know what we've done. You know what we've got done, whether it's securing this nation, whether it's taking care of our veterans, or it's being one of the people that's viewed as a compromiser. Ken asked me to tell you one thing you didn't know, and I'm saying this not at a dig at Collin, but I'm the top gun in Congress in shooting. I beat him this year, so there you go.
I appreciate the opportunity. It's nice to be here. I grew up on a grain and livestock farm just outside of Truman, and my father, grandfather, and great-grandfather were all Minnesota farmers, and it's that that experience that gives me a deep appreciation for agriculture and our way of life, and they're one of the reasons I want to go to Congress and be on the Ag Committee. But I have to tell you, this election offers a deep contrast. A deep contrast, not on the overriding ag issues. Congressman Walz and I agree on the basic farm programs and things of that nature, but on the ways that we view farmers. You know, I saw my dad and grandfather, they're just small businessmen. And farmers and agribusiness are small business folks, and they need support, not abuse from our government. So when it comes to voting for all these EPA regulations, I'm on the other side. I think we need to take those away from the farmers and help them out. When it comes to these big government programs like Obamacare, and we should have had a question on that today. You go around southern Minnesota and the farmers are talking about it. $10,000, $20,000, $25,000 in premiums with deductibles so high, the underlying insurance is worthless. We were told you can keep your doctor, you can keep your plan. No, you can't. Here's a cancellation notice. I went to a farmer 3 weeks ago from Blue Cross Blue Shield. They can't keep their plan. They're going to have to go out and find it. Those were all lies. Those were things that the federal government is doing to farmers, not for farmers. And then when it comes to things like energy independence, he's for the carbon tax. He's for big EPA regulations. I'm for energy independence and downward pressure. So I'd ask for your support in the elections. I'm Jim Hagedorn, 1st District Republican candidate for Congress. And let's take back our country and restore America's greatness. Thank you.
I became a farmer 40 years ago because I lost my father when I was 10 years old. And because of that, I wanted to do something where I could spend time with my family. And I have been blessed to be able to live my dream, farming with my family. In addition to that, I'm actually, or I used to be, a world-class cross-country skier. I competed in the World Championship in Austria. Since in the last 20 years, I have dedicated a lot of my spare time to restoring the land on my farm to native plants, and we spend, the whole family, the children, my wife, the grandchildren, we spend countless hours walking the trails, looking at the land that we have begun to restore to its former beauty. My overriding purpose is to encourage us all to be better stewards. I feel we are failing our future generations. We are leaving them less than we had. And if you disagree with that, feel free to vote for someone else. But if you think we need to be better stewards, I ask for your support in the elections to come. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm Tom Emmer. I'm a Minnesota kid. I was raised in this state. I've been all over this state. Married to a beautiful girl. Jackie Sue and I just celebrated our 30th anniversary last week. We are, yes, and she told me when I said happy anniversary, she said best 20 years of my life. And I said, sweetheart, we've been married 30 years. She said, yes, best 20 years of my life. We're the proud parents of 7 beautiful children, ages 26 down to 14. There are 6 boys, and there's 1 beautiful daughter who I don't mind saying publicly is my favorite, and the boys know that. I just want to go back to one thing, because it's about the election season we're in. And I look at my good friend Rod Hamilton sitting over here. It's great to see Rod. He practices this. I see Commissioner Frederickson here. He practices this. We all want the same things. It's got to stop being about us and them, even though we compete very hard when we get into these election season things. But it's about ideas. It's not supposed to be personal. And I say it again, I think we need more people that are going into these elected positions that understand, not only are willing to learn, because you can't know everything about everything, but understand what those things are that they're supposed to be fighting for, whether it's in Washington or St. Paul. And I heard a statement earlier today that lit me up just a little bit about government's not working against us, but that's why we're here. Because when government does work against us, we're the ones that are supposed to be out there working for you and making sure that you can do what's best for you and your family. Because guess what? When you succeed, everybody around you succeed, and this great state and this country succeeds. So thank you for all your support. Thanks for being here, and look forward to sticking around for the rest of the day.
My name's David Snyder. I'm running as a Democrat in the upcoming election. In addition to that, to know a little bit more about myself, well, when I grew up, I had 4 uncles that had farms. 3 of them were beef farms and 1 was a dairy farm. So working out on their farms during the summer months, I've learned quite a few things. But the two things that stuck with me most of all is that the farming community is the heart and soul of America, and always will be. I mean, industry may come and go, but the one thing that has always stayed here is the farming community. The other thing I learned was a work ethic. You work hard when you're out on the farm every single day. You don't have a day off. And especially if you're a dairy or a beef farmer, you either have cows to milk or cows to feed. So you work hard every day. I'm also a 7-year U.S. Army veteran helicopter pilot. I served during Desert Storm. And for the last 20 years, I've been a union iron worker. And so what I know about that is what I was taught when I was growing up as a kid. Yeah, I have a very strong work ethic. And like you, I got my hands dirty and I got calluses on my hands from building bridges and building buildings all over the state. So on August 9th and also on November 8th, if you elect me, you know you're electing one of your own, somebody that's going to work hard for you and has a very strong work ethic and will work more than the 110 days that Congress is actually in session every year. Thank you.
I'm Bob Helland, and I'm 31 years old. I'm also seeking the DFL nomination in CD6. And I'm here, quite frankly, because I have nothing to lose. When I got into this race back in September of last year, I have nothing to lose. Getting involved in politics as a young person, I have nothing to lose, and you have nothing to lose. That's my message to the young people in the audience today. In 2014, when I ran for the Independence Party as the Independence Party nominee for Secretary of State, I had nothing to lose. I had everything to gain and everything to help you as a state, from my experience in government, from my education in economics, from my upbringing in central Minnesota. I don't have anything to lose, but you all do, and I understand that. I understand that my peers have a future to lose, and that my young daughter has a future to lose, and that's what I'm fighting for, and that's why I'm in the race. I do want to touch on a couple things. You know, the biggest misconceptions when I hear, as a guy with a degree in economics, as politicians talk about economics, is the idea that value is always measured in dollars. The economics I learned is about quality of life. It's about your health, your happiness. It's more than dollars, and Congress needs to get over that. The other thing is, when we talk about the free market, there's this idea that you don't need information in the free market, but the theory of free market relies on information being in there, and that's why I think Congress and the important work that we can do with analysis to get information to you so that you can make informed choices in elections and working with your partners in government for your better futures. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm Collin Peterson. First of all, I want to thank the panel for your good questions and being